Last night that zucchini plant was 4 feet across and looked like it would outlive me. This morning it is lying flat on the soil, like somebody let the air out of it. Every leaf down, stem still green, ground still damp from Tuesday. I have been growing food in the same backyard for a long time, and I can tell you that almost nothing in a garden actually dies in August. It dies in July, quietly, and August is only when you finally notice. That is what makes this month so cruel. You walk out with the hose and you water the thing that is already gone, and you feel guilty about a plant you could not have saved with water in the first place. So, today we are doing autopsies, 8 of them. 8 things that fall apart in gardens across the country right about now, and what actually killed each one, because in nearly every case, it is not the thing people blame. Number 2 is your lawn, and there is a fair chance that whatever you are doing to rescue it right now is the thing finishing it off. And number 1 is that zucchini, the death that looks exactly like thirst, where no amount of water will help you, and about 10 minutes with a razor blade still might. If you like the old ways backed up with the reason they worked, subscribe and stay with me. Everything here works whether you are in Zone 5 or Zone 9. I will keep saying it, but you always count from your own frost dates, not from a calendar somebody printed in another state. Number 8, your cucumbers turned bitter. Same plant, same seed packet. In June, they were sweet, and in August, you take one bite and your face folds up. My grandmother never got upset about this. She would cut an inch off the stem end, peel the top third of the cucumber, taste it, and go right on making her salad. She never once explained why. She just knew the bitter lives at that end. She was right, and here is the reason. Cucumbers make a compound called cucurbitacin. It lives in the leaves and stems and roots, where it exists to make animals spit the plant out. Under stress, the plant moves it into the fruit, and it collects most heavily at the stem end and in the flesh, right under the skin. Purdue and Iowa State both point at the same triggers: high heat, low moisture, and swings between the two. A cucumber growing through a week of 95-degree afternoons on soil that went from soaked to bone dry is a cucumber under stress, and it tastes like it. The fix is not more frequent watering. It is deeper watering, an inch to an inch and a half a week, put down slow enough that it soaks instead of running off, and 2 or 3 inches of mulch to stop the soil swinging. Pick in the early morning while the fruit is still cool and full of water. And one honest warning: if a cucumber or a summer squash is bitter all the way through, not just at the end, do not eat it and do not try to pickle it. Throw it out. That level of cucurbitacin can genuinely make you sick, and it happens most often with seed saved from a plant that crossed with something ornamental. Number 7, the beans quit. Wall of green leaves, flowers everywhere in the morning. By evening, the flowers are on the ground and there are no new pods, and the ones that did set are short and twisted with 2 seeds rattling around inside. Every gardener I know blames the soil for this. They go buy fertilizer. That is money set on fire. Old-timers had a rule that beans stop when you stop, meaning keep them picked and they keep flowering, and that part holds up. But it is not what is happening here. Research out of the University of Delaware found the trigger in snap beans is night temperature, not day temperature. Once nights stay above about 68 degrees, pollination goes wrong. The pollen quality drops, fertilization fails, and you get exactly those stunted, lumpy pods. Beans handle a hot afternoon far better than they handle a warm night, which is why this shows up in August in places where June was hotter. So, there is nothing wrong with your soil and nothing wrong with you. Keep the plants picked clean, keep them watered, mulch to hold the root zone cooler, and wait. When the nights break, they flower again, and I have picked beans well into fall-off plants that sulked through August. Better yet, sow a fall crop right now if you have the room. Take the days to maturity on the packet. Add a week or so because everything slows as the light goes, and count backward from your average first frost. If that math lands before your frost date, you have time. Number 6, the lettuce shot up and turned bitter. One day, it is a tidy rosette. Then it stretches, throws up a thick center stalk, and the leaves go from sweet to something like chewing an aspirin. That is bolting, and once it starts, you cannot walk it back. The plant is not confused. Heat and long days together tell a lettuce that summer has arrived, and its only job left is to make seed before it dies. So it stops making leaves and starts making a flower stalk, and the sap that comes with it is what puts the bitterness in the leaf. The old gardeners handled this by geography rather than by product. They sowed late greens on the east side of the corn or under the pole beans, so the plants got morning sun and afternoon shade for free. You can do the same thing with a strip of 30% shade cloth for a few dollars. Sow your fall lettuce and spinach once the soil has come down off its peak. Keep the surface damp while it germinates, and pick early in the day when the leaves are cold and crisp. The bolted plants are not garbage either. Let one or two go all the way, and you get free seed, and the flowers feed hoverflies, whose larvae eat aphids all fall. Number 5. The white dust took your squash and cucumber leaves. It starts as a few pale spots on the older leaves near the ground. 2 weeks later, the plant looks like somebody threw flour on it. The leaves go brown and papery, and the fruit that is left ripens small and sunburned. Now here is where good advice gets people killed. Every gardener has been told to keep water off the leaves because wet leaves grow fungus. That is true for most diseases in your garden. Powdery mildew is the exception, and it is the one you have. This fungus does not need free water on the leaf to germinate. The University of Maine and the UC statewide program both spell it out, and Maine notes infection happening below 50% humidity. Water sitting on the leaf surface actually inhibits the spores. So, the person watering carefully at the roots, feeling smart, is doing nothing at all to stop this particular thing. What it does want is warm days, followed by nights that cool down enough to raise the humidity right at the leaf surface, plus dense, crowded foliage with poor air movement and low light down in the middle of the plant. That is August in one sentence. So, you attack the crowding, take out the worst of the lower leaves, and get them out of the garden rather than into a cold compost pile. Open the plant so air moves through it. Treat at the very first spots if you are going to treat at all, because nothing on the shelf cures a leaf that is already coated. And next spring, buy resistant varieties, which is the only part of this that ever really wins. Losing the last few weeks of a squash plant is survivable. Losing it in the third week of July is not. That is 4 down. Bitter cucumbers, beans that stopped setting, greens that bolted, and mildew on the vines. Notice that not one of them was a watering mistake, and 3 of them were the plant responding to temperature. Hold on to that, because the next 4 are where real money and real plants get lost. Number 4, the container plants cooked. Same potting mix, same fertilizer, same plants that were beautiful in June. In August, they wilt by 2 in the afternoon, no matter how much you water. The new growth stalls and the leaf edges brown. People water more. The plant gets worse. That is because the problem is not the water. It is the temperature about an inch inside the pot wall. Roots are less tolerant of temperature extremes than leaves are. A plant in the ground is buffered by a huge mass of soil around it. A plant in a pot has sun hitting it from the sides and the top with nothing to soak up the heat. University of Kentucky work on nursery containers found root zone temperatures in full sun consistently past 104 degrees for 5 to 10 hours a day. And near the west-facing wall of the container, they usually exceed 120, with readings over 130 on record. Root injury starts in that neighborhood. Yukon puts the practical version plainly. A white or green container can run 9 to 18 degrees cooler inside than a black one. So the old advice to sink your pots into the ground for the summer was not superstition, it was insulation. If you cannot bury them, push them together so they shade each other. Get them up off the concrete or the asphalt that radiates heat into the bottom all evening. Mulch the surface of the pot the way you would a bed, and slip the black nursery pot inside a lighter colored one. If you are buying pots, buy light. It costs the same, and it buys you the whole month of August. Number 3. The shrubs and perennials went crispy around the edges, not the whole leaf. The margins and the tips browning and curling inward, while the middle of the leaf stays green. Hydrangeas do it. Japanese maples do it. Young trees planted last fall do it worst of all. That is leaf scorch, and it is a plumbing problem rather than a sunburn. On a hot afternoon, a plant loses water from its leaves faster than the roots can pull it up, and the tissue farthest from the plumbing, which is the edge of the leaf, dries out and dies first. The soil can be moist, and it can still happen, because the bottleneck is the speed of transport, not the amount of water in the ground. The old ring of mulch around the drip line and the slow, deep soak. Once a week is exactly the right treatment, and it beats a daily sprinkle every time, because it puts water where the working roots are instead of teasing the top inch. 2 to 3 inches of mulch, and keep it off the trunk. Then there is the mistake that turns a scorched shrub into a dead one. Do not feed it now. A shot of nitrogen in late summer pushes out soft new growth that has no time to harden before your first frost. And that growth is what gets killed, and the plant pays for it all winter. Old-timers quit feeding woody plants weeks before frost for exactly that reason. Water it, mulch it, leave the fertilizer in the shed until spring. Number 2. The lawn went brown, and you might be finishing it off. Cool season grass, so fescue or Kentucky bluegrass, or a mix, goes brown in a hot, dry August because that is its survival strategy. The leaves die back on purpose. The crown at the soil surface stays alive, and everything regrows from the crown when the weather turns. Dormant and dead look identical from the kitchen window. From 2 feet away, they do not. Grab a handful of brown grass and pull. Dormant grass holds on, and the crowns are still pale and firm at the base. Dead grass comes up in your fist like a toupee. Here is the part that costs people their lawns. Iowa State says it about as clearly as an extension office ever says anything. Watering enough to green it up, then letting it slide back into dormancy is very stressful on the plant. In and out, all month. That cycle does far more damage than the drought does. Pick a lane. Either you irrigate it properly all the way through, or you let it stay asleep and give it survival water only, which is roughly a quarter to a half inch every 2 to 3 weeks. That is not enough to wake it up. It is enough to keep the crowns alive, which is the whole objective. 2 more things while it is dormant. Raise your mower because taller blades shade the crown, and soil that is shaded holds moisture far longer, and mowing a stressed lawn short is the most common way people convert dormancy into death. And do not fertilize it, and do not spray weed killer on it. You are asking a sleeping plant to do work it cannot do, and the weeds will absolutely win that fight. If that one just changed what you were going to do to your yard this weekend, tap the like button. It is the one thing that helps an old gardener get found by somebody who needs this. Number 1. The squash collapsed overnight, and water will not save it. Back to that zucchini lying flat in the dirt. Here is the tell that separates this from thirst, and once you know it, you will never confuse the two again. A squash plant short on water wilts in the afternoon and stays wilted. A plant with a borer in it wilts hard in the heat and then partly stands back up overnight when transpiration slows, and does it again the next day, a little worse each time, until one morning it does not come back. Go to the base of the stem, right at the soil line, and look for what appears to be damp orange sawdust. That is frass, squash, vine borer. The adult is a day-flying moth that lays eggs at the base of the plant, and the larva tunnels up inside the stem, eating the vascular tissue, which is the plumbing that carries water from the roots. The plant is not thirsty. The plant has been cut off from its own water supply, and you can pour 100 gallons on it and change nothing. Now the part that makes this worth telling. You can often still save it, and the method comes straight out of old vegetable gardens. Take a clean, sharp blade and slit the stem lengthwise, starting at the entry hole, cutting upward, away from the roots. Open it gently, find the fat white grub inside, and take it out. There may be more than one. Then mound moist soil over the cut section of stem and keep it damp. That last step is the whole trick, and Wisconsin and Kentucky Extension both recommend it. Squash puts out new roots from the nodes along its stem when they are in contact with soil. You are giving the plant a second root system above the damage, so it does not matter as much that the original plumbing has a hole in it. Do it within a few days of the first wilt, and the odds are decent. Do it preventively, too. Anytime you have a long vining squash running across the ground, bury a couple of nodes along the vine now. It costs you 30 seconds, and it means a borer at the base cannot take the whole plant. And when the season is over, pull those old vines out of the garden and destroy them, because the larvae drop out of the stem after a few weeks and go into the soil to spend the winter waiting for your next squash patch. So, before you water anything else this week, walk your garden once with all of this in your head. Check the base of every squash stem for orange sawdust. Pull a fistful of brown lawn and find out whether it is sleeping or gone. Put your hand on the sunny side of every dark pot you own and see if it is too hot to hold. Taste the stem end of a cucumber before you slice the whole thing into a bowl. Look under the older squash leaves near the ground for the first white spots, not the last ones. Water deep and slow at the roots instead of often and shallow at the top. And put the fertilizer down. None of that is guesswork. It is what people did before there was a product for every problem, and the science caught up and told them they were right. Next time out, I want to talk about the window that closes on you this month, which is fall planting. There is still a real crop to be had before frost in almost every zone. And there is a simple bit of arithmetic that tells you exactly what you still have time for and what you have already missed. If you want that when it lands, subscribe and it will come to you. And tell me down in the comments which one of these 8 you found in your own garden this week. I read them, and it tells me what to talk about next. See you in the garden.